No, no buzz. Just Bees Book Club. That's an interesting intonation. I took the photo and then I took the book back to the library, so I will not be referring to the book because I do not have the book anymore. Today, we are talking about Gold Rush by Miri Yu, an author who I quite like. Um, Prior to this, I had only read one book. I did a video about it actually when I reread it for book club recently. I've read her um, other book, her most recent book, I believe, Tokyo Inno Station, twice now, actually. It's a very, very different book from this one. Um, in looking this up, I realized I don't remember who translated Tokyo Inno Station, but I realized that the Gold Rush was translated by Stephen Snyder, a name I recognize because he is the primary, I think, only English translator of Yoko Ogawa to this point. Another author I quite like. His translations I've read are The Memory Police, The Housekeeper and the Professor, Revenge, and Hotel Iris, and The Drowning Pool. He did all of those. And I suspect he probably did Tokyo Edo, but I could be wrong about that. I think that came out. I think both Memory Police and Tokyo Inno came out 2019, but I could be wrong about that. Memory Police could have come out a year or two earlier. Anyway, uh, this translation of the Gold Rush, of Gold Rush rather, came out in '02. It was originally written in '98, and it is a book about a young adult named Kazu who, um, just to put it out there, opens the book by walking around Koganecho and like seems to know like some of the local gangsters and sex workers, and then is involved in a gang rape with three of his friends. Um, the book goes from there. This book, I mean, there is on-screen murder of pets. The sort of central movement of the plot is that Kazu uh, kills his dad with a samurai sword and buries his body in the like basement in the hidden compartment where his dad, who is the owner of a bunch of, or maybe just one huge pachinko parlor called Vegas, and Kazu is the presumable heir. Uh, Keeps this like hidden stash of gold bars. So the body's buried in the gold bar uh, secret room below the basement. Um, the father repeatedly brutalizes Kazu's older sister physically in very active scenes. It is a bleak book that has very actively bad to read stuff happening if you read for uh, you know things that you don't want to uh, experience other people to experience. I don't know, to experience. I thought I was looking into it and I was like thinking like 2002. Why would this have gotten published in 2002? Um, and I think one of the big reasons now that I've like looked into it a little bit is that Steven Snyder seems to have been just like actively courting relationships at publication houses for publishing or translating Japanese literature for like at least a decade prior to that, maybe two. So there's probably relationships involved in there, but also The Ring. It's 2002. So there's an interest in J horror happening at this moment, or a burgeoning interest that then balloons. Maybe bubbles is a better word over the course of the next decade or so, and has since kind of popped. This is not a horror novel. I think the thing that it gets compared to most frequently on the random things I've read is The Catcher in the Rye, a book I've never read, and I don't want to. I don't care. Uh, I would say Soseki's Kokoro um, seems, if that's like not the right book, you know, it's this is just a bees book club. If you're not a bee, you're not allowed to watch. So don't worry about it. But you know, the one I'm thinking of, if it's not Kokoro, it's I think it must be, unless that's just the one that I saw recently when I was working at my job, and it's actually another thing that I should know. Anyway, you know, the one about the student and there's like the big brawl in the streets between other students and teachers and shit. That's, you know, that book's fun. Um, that seems more in the line, but also it's very clearly dealing with like specifically, you know, post bubble Japan, disaffected youth uh, from rich families. Um, I never got a sense of, or I got the sense, actually, maybe is a better way to put it. I got the sense that this is a book that could be read in very many different political valences, and that it didn't have, again, at least in translation, any sort of strong moral push in any direction, which is a thing I tend to admire more often than not. Um, okay. Um, yeah, I mean, so all to say, it's sort of a hard book to read, but like I don't know, I think the main takeaway for me in reading it, or the reason I finished it, maybe is a better way to put it, is um, I kept finding her use. So it's written in like a fairly strict, um, close third person POV. Uh, you know, is Kazu is referred to Kazu and not as I, as it were. But we don't really leave his head. We don't really have big scenes of, you know, a camera flying over the city and just like showing what's happening, setting around. We have very tight access to Kazu's thought process as these things are happening. Um, but it does slip in this way that I like really loved every time it happened, and it happened just at a clip, at like a certain clip, like at a pace at which, um, whenever I sort of felt myself flagging, we would get this moment where the sort of narrative voice would sort of slip away from Kazu and into somebody else's head, and it would be like one paragraph, maybe two, maybe two. I don't have the book on me. I can't check. I wouldn't check anyway. This is all shot in a single thing. And there's sort of like those insights into other people's brains were never. It was never a thing where it was like, because there's a million ways to do that, right? You're writing a book. You can choose to have these moments where you slip into somebody else's brain, and so you identify that with italicized text. You switch up the writing style. You structure your sentences differently. You give them a stream of consciousness versus a narrative voice, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A million more examples that I could, you know, eventually get to that I'm going to cut myself off from trying to even start from. Uh, but it was this way that you like kept the narrative voice the same, but like represented um, the idea that other people were full other people. That this is not a fundamentally solipsistic story structurally. That this is a close third person perspective on somebody who has. And again, this is the part where I say like I can't speak to the politics of this book because uh, I could see it read in so many different ways, and I don't have a very strong reading myself. Uh, that like there is either way a strong narrative voice that runs through the thing that is not a, like fundamentally attached to Kazu as a character, or that is not produced by Kazu as a character, um, but that is deeply embedded within him. Um, and and frankly, I'll read a book for that. I'll like a book for that. Use I think this is I can't remember how many books she's written in Japanese. She's also a Zainichi Korean Japanese person. Just to say the thing, say a thing. Um, I don't know how many books she's written. I'm pretty sure the only three books that have been translated are this um, Tokyo Ina Station, and like this year there was a translation of End of August, which I think was her like 2008 novel. Um, it's kind of a little doorstopper. So I'm very curious to read that. I wonder if that the Snyder translation also I would sort of expect it would be, but again I don't remember if Atlanta Station was, so who knows. Um, I'm I mean that's the other thing, right? It's just like I think Miri Yu's writing is quite good in translation because that's how I read it because it you know took a quarter and a half of Japanese at one point, but never quite got to kanji. I dropped out because my brain broke. Um, yeah, I think that's a big thing I want to say. Yeah, just that that sort of like formal trick really has stuck with me in a way that I'm like still thinking about. I talked about a similar thing across the Julio Toka books that I read this year, last year, whatever the fuck that was. I love a formal trick. I love a formal gimmick, especially one that is deeply embedded in the text and changes the way that things work. But even one that doesn't, I kind of fuck with because they all do. That's the secret. They all do. Unfortunately, they all do. Um, but yeah, cool book. Thanks for not watching.